What I thought probably would be a good place to start with, Kenneth, is for you just to introduce yourself and to give an overview of your current role and a bit about yourself as well, if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. I'm Kenneth Tittelstad. I've been around 6 months now in the role of Chief Commercial Officer in Omni. So Omni is a startup company from Norway, having worked 3 years with a platform solution for OT cybersecurity. So we are born out of OT with our main owners being the Aker Group, Telenor, and Cognite. So really born out of OT, aiming for solving really some of the big challenges in OT cybersecurity. How to model the physical infrastructure and the digital infrastructure in one single digital model. So that to be able to identify the risks, the threats, the vulnerabilities, and what actions you need to take to handle those challenges. So that's Omni, where I'm Chief Commercial Officer. Coming over from Soprasteria, where I spent 7 years in starting from almost from scratch when I started with focusing on OT cybersecurity in Soprasteria, and I headed up our work there. And through over 7 years, we were able to build one of Europe's strongest consulting houses on OT cybersecurity. A journey which I'm very proud of, and have, of course, a lot of friends and colleagues over there in Soprasteria, but also who have gone on and have come into other different roles in industry across Norway and the Nordics. At the same time, I've also been a very passionate guy on OT cybersecurity. So I've also been chairman for the International Standardization Committee in Norway, the Norwegian Electrotechnical Committee, where we administer the IEC 62443, which is the international standard on this area. So I get to meet a lot of passionate engineers and technical authorities who are working on OT cybersecurity across industries.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Kenneth, everyone has a story of how their careers started and how it all come to pass.
Yeah.
What's your story? How did you break into cybersecurity?
Yeah, then I would say that it happened. I came from IT infrastructure. I worked as an architect and team manager in Equinor, one of the big oil and gas companies. So I was responsible for Windows, the large parts of the Windows environment in Equinor. And I was starting to look at going offshore on the oil and gas platforms on the Norwegian continental shelf. So on my first trip offshore, I was going out there just to do some investigation on a troublesome firewall out there. I don't remember the brand of it, but it was kind of noisy, creating some noisy alerts without actually being real alerts. So it was false positives. But when I was out there, I got to understand the tremendous focus they have on HSEQ. Safety is everything. IT is just troublesome. It's much more important to always have focus on safety. So I was really amazed by for instance, seeing that in the control room at the facility, they had these big screens on the wall, and they were actually misbehaving a bit with blue screens of death, which we know quite well from old legacy IT stuff. So with basically running Windows XP behind it. So I had done courses and training on what to do with blue screens and how to troubleshoot it. So I was actually able to fix it deep in the industrial control system due to a bad HP driver, kind of the typical culprit of those kind of blue screens. So that was the start where I saw that my IT skills, kind of old skills, actually can be used to fix stuff in really high critical control systems. So that was the start of for me. seeing that my IT skills can really mean a difference deep into business critical systems for Equinor.
Yeah, amazing. And you've obviously journeyed through engineering into management, to business building, into leadership. We were just talking a short while ago about now responsibilities towards investors. What's been the greatest learning curve for you in all of those different journeys?
I would say that it's all the time being reminded that it's about people. So even though I dive deep down into technology, risk, cybersecurity incidents, threats, and those kind of things, fear, uncertainty, doubt, and lots and lots of interesting technology evolution, technological breakthroughs. It's always about people. So it's people trying to make it work. It's people trying to develop new stuff. It's people behind each role in the company, really happy about their work or their collaboration with their colleagues, or being frustrated about not being able to collaborate between the different departments in the company or between the different disciplines. So I tend to always be reminded that it's always people that we have to see with the lenses we look at technology.
Yeah, 100%. And when you're not dealing with threats or compliance or security issues, how do you switch off from all of it? What do you do away from all of this?
I think I'm kind of the person that doesn't put really strong barriers between work and private life. So kind of the personality type that lets everything flow, and I'm really happy about it as well. So I have most of my best friends is colleagues as well, and vice versa. So I can take sort of a break during the early morning or during the day, and then I gather myself and take some hours working in the evening instead to get the work done. So I get through it due to being passionate about it and having a lot of my best friends around me at work.
Great answer. The convergence of IT and OT has been a buzzword for years. Where do you still see the biggest blind spot when securing that overlap?
I think then I would like to bring forward the safety critical interfaces. So when IT meets OT, we have a different technology merging, but it's often about Windows. It's often about Cisco, different kind of digital technology. That is very similar, but what is very different is the potential consequences when you move far out in the physical world. So it's the potential consequences on the pure digital area is information, but when you move it completely over to the OT side, where you actually go into the physical world, the consequences is purely physical. So then it's about things that are really threatening and dangerous. So that's a completely different ball game, completely different consequences than just handling information. And I think that's a continuous blind spot where we work in our screens, in our applications, in our risk assessment matrices. And we tend to overlook that this can actually be very dangerous and life-threatening if we don't do it properly. Yeah,
absolutely. You've obviously worked in the consulting arena for many years, and you've probably seen a shift in the boardroom mentality in the last 5 to 10. What has kind of that been like in terms of that perception of OT security at boardroom level in that period of time?
Yeah, I would like to see it in the light of the VUCA, volatility, uncertainty, complexity, ambiguity. So now we have been at least a couple of years in the age of VUCA, where everything is just complex and volatile. So I've seen the board members really pick up on that. The investment decisions, they take longer time. They double down on analysis to ensure that they actually do the right decisions when everything is changing. And when cyber incidents can happen all or everywhere, they need to make sure that they are resilient towards it. Not necessarily prevent it, because that could be impossible. But they are actually resilient and can recover from them properly. And also regulations coming on top of it. So they have to do it due to regulations. They have to do it due to compliance reasons. So that makes it nowadays it's a very different conversation with board members and executives, because they really know about the cybersecurity issues, the volatile environment around us, complexities, uncertainties, and they know that they have to do something about it due to the regulations. So I hear, for instance, executives often saying that it's a common topic between executives at social meetups and dinners and those kind of things, where cybersecurity is a very, very common topic to talk about. In addition to everything else you talk about between executives.
Amazing. That's very pleasing to hear.
Yeah.
You touched upon regulations and frameworks. Frameworks like NIS2 and IEC 62443, in your opinion, are they genuinely improving resilience, or do you feel that organizations are still approaching them as a box ticking exercise?
Both. In the short run, I think they can make it worse, because there's a really, really big need for resources to go into the regulation terrain, understand it. Like, for instance, 62443 alone is over 1,000 pages if you also consider some of the draft documents. So it's a terrible thing to dive into and get to know what it is. Very, very hard to understand the principles behind it. The same with the NIS 1 and NIS 2, Cyber Resilience Act, machinery regulation, this radio equipment directive. There's lots of them, and all of them are lots and lots of pages. So I see that kind of the access to resources breaks down completely when all companies in Europe need to do this approach at the same time.
Yeah.
So that's a major challenge, but in the longer run, I hope that we are able to do it in a kind of scalable, balanced way together in Europe, across the different sectors, across the different companies. So in the longer run, it will actually up the minimal cybersecurity level of our products and services. But I am actually concerned that it will rather break down instead. So it will take years and years to actually come through it and actually start to increase maturity. Yeah,
no, I completely agree. If you could redesign how organizations approach OT security from scratch, what's the first thing you would change, and why would you change it?
I would think that it would have to be something about the approach or how you balance people, process, and technology. Don't buy a technology to solve it. So like Bruce Schneider is saying that if you think technology can solve your cybersecurity issues, then you don't understand cybersecurity and you don't understand technology. So cybersecurity is a process, and in that sense, it's also a never-ending process. So I would recommend businesses to start looking at it as a process. Start where you are. dive into it and understand kind of what's your current status, your kind of maturity level. You don't need a perfect picture of it, but you need to start somewhere, and then start to focus on what's the most important things you need to do right now. Prioritize heavily. So that takes into consideration the risk-based perspective, or the principle of proportionality. Start with what matters most. If you are concerned for sort of safety issues, or whether your company can survive a ransomware attack, then you need to start there. You need to involve the right experts to figure out what you should do going forward with that kind of really hard prioritized place to start. Yeah, so prioritize and do the kind of very, very basic risk assessments.
Great takeaways there.
Yep.
Probably one of the most talked about topics in the last 2 years has been AI.
Mm-hmm.
And you've got some quarters who are saying it's an absolute game changer, and others who are saying the world's going to end. It's a game ender. It obviously is the new reality. Where do you kind of sit on the whole topic of AI currently?
I'm a technology optimist in that sense. I don't think it's something that will end the world. I don't think it will completely revolutionize the world either. But we need to take it seriously, because it's actually going to make a lot of work much more efficient. And in that sense, it's also going to change roles. Some going into the future, there could be the work types not actually out there anymore, because it's been automated away with AI. So we need to be able to take that into consideration. But now we see that on the cybersecurity side, the adversaries, they are using it. Of course, we as defenders need to use it as well, but do it in a kind of piloted way, where we can't just jump in and trust it from day one. We need to test it out in safeguarded environments, put in guardrails, so we let it play in a sandbox. And when it recommends solutions, then we make sure that we audit it and validate it before we actually go onwards with the recommendations coming from AI. But in that way, we can actually start to use it and pilot with it, even in safety critical systems. We need to safeguard it and guardrail it properly. And if we do that, then we actually can start piloting more on it. And we have to.
Yeah. And I guess on that topic, how far away do you think we are from seeing AI-driven automation play a practical, trusted role in industrial security operations?
Yeah, I think it's still there. Or it's actually there now. So there's model predictions, for instance. That's something that automation OEMs have been delivering for, I think it's around 10 years or so. They've been doing that. So it's kind of advanced algorithms, neural networks. They've been doing that for 10 years. So there's a really fine line on whether you call it AI or not. But they have been doing it for at least 10 years already. So AI is, or primitive AI is already doing lots and lots of industrial automation.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you could use AI to remove one pain point from your job today, what would you remove?
My handling of my emails. So I would love to have an AI agent that could handle my emails.
I can't see it. I can't imagine that we're far away from that.
No, I've actually been testing out a couple of them already. So I'm not sure if you've gotten one of those crazy emails that my AI assistant sent out, but I had to stop it. But we are close to it.
Amazing. Little bit of refinement, and we'll be there.
Yeah.
And on the topic of AI, do you think it will help attract more people into cybersecurity, or do you think it will be harder to develop the deep domain-specific expertise that OT requires?
Both. Both. With AI in cybersecurity, cybersecurity gets kind of more sexy. So cybersecurity could be a discipline where it's kind of the conservative people who jumps in on it, while the ones really wanting to work on new technology and cutting edge, they go into the development area instead of cybersecurity. But with AI coming into cybersecurity, it gets more exciting, but it's also challenging to become an expert in the field, because as graduates or beginners in the field of cybersecurity, you are competing with all the other ones who are heavily using AI themselves.
Yeah.
So to stick out among all of the other ones, I think the competition gets much worse now with everyone being cyborgs with their own AI agents. So I'm really curious about what the future of the future cybersecurity expert will look like, but I do think that it's someone who has really got the knack of using all the right AI agents and AI tools.
Yeah, I completely agree. We're seeing a lot of it from our side, where as we were speaking about just a short while ago, roles are not being replaced, but they're evolving at a rate of knots. And it's absolutely critical that the next generation, whether it's the next generation or the current generation, use, adopt, and really integrate it into their current workflows and skill set, most importantly.
Yeah.
Naturally, as people who either recruit or have recruited many cyber professionals, we've seen certainly the skills gap growing and growing and growing, and the demand for people across the globe increasing, certainly with the advent of AI. What do you think, if you were kind of making recommendations to the next generation in terms of skills that they should be developing to break into this ecosystem and to have a kind of a long-lasting career? What advice would you give to people going on that journey?
I would recommend them to stay curious on new technology coming, to be able to navigate the shifting landscape we will definitely be having in the future. Stay curious, look into new technology, experiment with new technology. Don't be afraid of it. Put guardrails in place, the necessary ones, so you can experiment with new technology. And also look for multipliers. So for instance, when you look with AI agents, if you're able to, in your work or in your studies, if you are actually able to use AI and AI agents, you get the effects of multipliers. So that's also something that company and businesses and societies will be compensating. If you are able to make solutions that gives good effects for lots and lots of people and companies, that's something that will ensure you a job and a good role kind of forever. So that's something. There's something about looking, if you're able to looking for the multipliers that benefit you and your friends and your school or your company. That's something that will be companies will be hunting for those kind of people.
Yeah, 100%. And we've seen a lot of transfers between departments where, because the skills gap is so wide, people have got to think about where else they can recruit people from and can they upskill internally. If you're hiring or mentoring someone and they don't have the certifications, they don't have the technical expertise, I know you mentioned a few things already there, but what other things would you look for to see whether they could make that natural transition into a cyber role?
Personality profile. I think that's very interesting to have a look at. If they are curious in nature, if they are kind of they dare to try out new technology, and they they would like to look at how to build safeguards around it or barriers around it so they can actually play around with new technology. I don't think it would be necessary for them to have certification or a master's degree in a specific field to make them interesting. So that's also back to my entrance into OT cybersecurity. I don't have a degree in cybersecurity. I don't have an engineering degree. I have taken some certifications lately, but that was just lately. So my degree is in organization psychology.
Right.
So that's also something I think about when it comes to recruiting. You don't need to have the formal education or the formal certification, but the personality traits, that's something that is very, very important.
Yeah, completely agree. Completely agree. Kenneth, I set your expectation at the beginning that I'd be thrusting some quick fire questions on you. Some interesting ones here. So answer them as you see fit.
Yeah.
So I'll start with the first one. So in your opinion, what's the most overused phrase in cybersecurity?
MDR.
Yeah, absolutely. Which security framework do you secretly enjoy working with?
NIST cybersecurity framework.
Good on you. If you could eliminate one common security mistake forever, what would it be?
Easy guessable passwords.
Yeah. One book or podcast that every cybersecurity professional should check out.
Darknet Diaries.
One quality every great security leader needs.
Being able to motivate people.
Yeah. Can you name a mentor or a figure who's had the biggest impact on your cybersecurity career?
Robert Lee from Dragos.
Okay. When you're in a situation where you need to kind of focus and channel your energies, what songs do you have on your playlist?
None. Completely silent.
Yeah, don't blame you. A guilty pleasure app or game on your phone?
TikTok.
TikTok. Good on you. Finish the sentence. If I wasn't in cybersecurity, I'd be.
Working with psychology.
Working with psychology. Excellent. Kenneth, it's been an absolute pleasure. It's been brilliant. I just want to kind of open the floor to you because I recognize, as we were speaking about a little while ago, and we've known each other for a little while, and I recognize the impact you've made on the industry and understanding that you have within it.
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about Omni, because we were obviously speaking about the transition between Sopra Steria to Omni, but tell me a little bit about the business, the plans, and how you found it in your new environment.
Yeah, so Omni is something I really got more and more interested in, especially the last year or in 2024. I've been following Omni from the beginning, but in 2024 I saw the consultancy business around Europe starting to break down due to too much demand. So all of the companies around in Europe, they need lots and lots of senior cybersecurity people hunting for the same ones. The consultancy companies not able to deliver properly. And the cannibalism started heavily in 2024 when all of these companies started to hire themselves.
Yeah.
So that's an effect I see will be exacerbated going forward with all the regulations and the increasing threat levels. So that's a future which the consultancy business it's not scalable the way we do it now. We need to be able to put AI into the loop, the right tools into the loop as well, so that we can help the different businesses with a much bigger multiplier. And that's where software comes into the picture. And I see that, for instance, software solution is something that, and AI is something that we really need to have for the increasing threat levels we have and volatility. So that's where I saw Omny as a really interesting prospect for me, where they focus on OT cybersecurity software solution, and I jumped over to Omny 7 months ago, and we are born out of OT with an ambition to build a really powerful digital twin or digital representation of the facilities you have in your business. So it means covering and showing and modeling the physical infrastructure, the motor, the engines, the valves, the turbines, as well as all the digital equipment you have with switches, firewalls, networks, operator stations, those kind of things. They are in the same model. With everything being connected where you have your IP addresses, you have your documentation, you have your technical drawings. And with that model, you're much more able to see your asset inventory, your complete asset inventory on both cyber and physical. And with that asset inventory, you are much more prepared when you need to protect it more, your asset more. You look to your digital twin to figure out how to. The same way when you have to detect something, you need to understand, okay, I've detected something in my plant. What kind of potential consequences could it have? You need your digital model to understand it, and response and recover as well, to be able to rebuild something. When you have a digital representation of it, you are in a much stronger position to actually do response and recovery in a much shorter time.
Yeah, absolutely. And how does the company look at the moment? So can you give a kind of a bird's eye view of the kind of headcount and where it's positioned? And
yeah, currently we are 3 years down the road as a software SaaS startup, and we are around 45 people, primarily in Norway. Our ambition is to for the next couple of years extend into Europe, and then go for the rest of the world with a major global ambition.
Yeah, amazing. And you were telling me a little bit about the investment structure earlier on, which is naturally going to propel this significant growth journey. Would you mind just sharing a bit of information on that?
Yeah, that's public information, so I can share that information at least. So we are co-owned by two of the biggest company in Norway, with the Aker Group having half of the company, and Telenor as the major telco in the Nordics having the other half of the company, and Cognite being also on the ownership list. We have access to Cognite's technology as well in our platform. So that makes that's a very for competitors that we see it as an unfair advantage, because we have really strong access to industries, to plants, to prospects and clients deep into industry, due to our two main owners.
Yeah, absolutely. And I imagine there's going to be a fair bit of growth and recruitment happening for you guys, not just in Norway, but across Europe, as you mentioned, and potentially further afield over the coming years.
Yeah.
How would you pitch life at Omny to somebody who is potentially looking at you guys as a future employer?
If you want to be part of a really big adventure where the ambition is to become a major company, solving some of the most difficult challenges in industries across the world, then you need to be part of Omny.
Amazing. Kenneth, Super. Thank you so much.
Thank you as well.